Yo, what's going on, you guys? This is your boy RBG, aka The Random Black Gamer, bringing you another video on Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. And usually I hit you guys with an analysis / breakdown on all the different things that we've seen in regards to this title, but I wanted to take it upon myself to give you something a little different, something that's not necessarily in the wheelhouse, and that is reactions. Yeah, we're actually going to be reacting to a video that I saw on a channel by the name of Gameology, and I'm no stranger when it comes to this channel. I watch a good amount of their content. One of their biggest things that they actually do is provide us with reactions to video games. They get a guest that's associated with that video game or adjacent to it, and they get them to react and give their thoughts on it. You will probably see things like the voice actors of the Grand Theft Auto 5 cast react to popular videos and memes in regards to the game that they voiced. And you'll also see martial artists react to things associated with martial arts such as Tekken, Street Fighter, and even Mortal Kombat. And one thing that I will give them credit for is that these martial artists that they get to react to these videos, they've been noticed by some of the developers of the games that they've reacted to, and they've been able to go into these companies and work for them by providing motion capture and having their actual likenesses scanned to be in these games. So I understand that Gameology has contributed a lot to the community, but when it comes to the DBZ community, it hasn't contributed much. And this video that they just uploaded says that. It shows that in spades, and I want to react to it because I initially watched the video, but I had to stop it. I didn't get a chance to just watch it all the way through because I knew it was very much going to be one of those rage bait videos. As you can see by their viewership, it hasn't been the best as of late, which says a lot considering the fact that this is a channel that boasts over 2 million subscribers. And I'm not one to just knock big channels that aren't really doing that well in the algorithm. My channel isn't really the best at all, especially right now, but when it comes to channels doing this, you know, they tend to get a bit desperate, and I feel like that's the case with Gameology. They're actually trying to fish for rage bait views when it comes to Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. And as you can see, the video hasn't been doing that well. Even though you can't see the like to dislike ratio, it's obvious that it's been ratioed to oblivion in terms of dislikes. I'm pretty sure the dislike button has been pressed more than the like button, if you know what I mean. And I'm gonna be reacting to the video and pausing it as we go along to kind of prove a point here that people who don't know what they're talking about should not make videos on that said thing that they don't know that they're talking about. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into this. Gameology: why Dragon Ball Sparking Zero feels so similar and not in a good way. Let's get it.
Can you spot what's wrong with these two Dragon Ball Z games? They show the same scene, Goku and Vegeta battling it out in a Utah-looking desert. It's a classic clash that took DBZ into the modern era. And with the new engine, you can likely pick out which one is the newest game, Sparking Zero. But which one is the second newest? Does the gameplay look different? Faster? Smoother? Tighter? Closer to the source material? Besides the graphics, it's almost impossible to tell. And that's a problem. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is looking to switch up the DBZ Arena Fighter formula, but the truth is, it fails to switch up the formula at all. There have been well over 100 titles in the DBZ franchise, from the sublime to the absurd. But when Dragon Ball started using a boilerplate Arena Fighter template back in 2002 with the introduction of the Budokai.
And this is where I stopped watching the video initially. As you hear, this guy has said that Sparking Zero doesn't bring anything new to the table in regards to the 3D battle arena genre. And he's saying that the Dragon Ball series at large has been using that particular genre since Budokai. And if you guys know anything about Dragon Ball Z Budokai, you will know that it's not a battle arena fighter. It's a simple 2D fighter with 3D mechanics implemented in it. So yeah, a lot of false information has been made in a matter of 59 seconds of this video even playing, and now we're gonna have to endure a lot of other false informations that he's gonna be saying in the video. But yeah, we're in for a big treat here, people. I hope you buckled your seatbelts and you will try to turn your brain off so you can endure some of the fallacies and incorrect assessments that this guy has made so far. But let's get back into it.
The franchise has felt like it's been stuck in a hyperbolic time chamber. With over 20 different DBZ Arena Fighters released in the past 20 years, Sparking Zero promises to be more of an...
I'm not sure if this guy got an editor to do the job after he had did the commentary, but as you can see, a usage of games that don't even exist within the wheelhouse of 3D fighters. Bad start, bro.
...size and nostalgia than an actual competitive fighting game.
But she's got a new hat.
Dragon Ball fans deserve better. Full disclosure, I've been a huge Dragon Ball fan since I stumbled across it on Spanish Access Television when I was 10 years old. I love Dragon Ball. It means more to me than any other animated franchise. I name my cat Piccolo and sometimes dress him up like Lord Beerus. That's why I need Dragon Ball Z to do better. Looking back on the past is comforting, but we can't live in it forever. We deserve either a transformative leap forward for the series or a sequel to the only transcendent Dragon Ball game over the last decade. I've played...
So this guy is kind of telling us or suggesting that we should get another Dragon Ball FighterZ, which that's all fine and dandy. I love Dragon Ball FighterZ for what it is. It's for all intents and purposes a competitive 2D fighter, but that's not what Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is trying to obtain. That's not the thing that it's trying to pull people in on. It is pulling people on nostalgia and trying to remind us of the good times where we played the Tenkaichi series, particularly Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, which this game continues to showcase that it's the continuation of. It is the true successor and the official Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4. He mentions a lot in regards to competitive edge, which you can argue that Dragon Ball Sparking or the Sparking Zero game, it's not going for that. Like I've said, it's all about regaining that feel that we had from the yesteryear of the Tenkaichi series. But there are competitive elements in it. You can't just go into this game and just button mash and expect to reign victorious over a lot of opponents. You have to actually know what you're doing at the end of the day, especially when you're going up against players who are very acquainted with the schematics of this game. So yeah, definitely not off to a great start with this. This is already showing that this person doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about, and they're going to be using a lot of straw man arguments to back up their points.
Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, and unfortunately, my fears were confirmed. This is deja vu all over again. Now, the Sparking Zero graphics are the best they've ever been, and I applaud them for having destructible environments and trees that sway when hit with ki power, but graphics alone do not make a game. When you dissect a match, it's much slower than it looks. Real impact and damage is far apart, and it doesn't have the back and forth, keep 'em guessing momentum battles of top fighting games.
That would be a lie. There is nothing slow-paced about Sparking Zero's gameplay or combat. All the things that we have seen so far have proven to go against what this guy is arguing. Actually, based on things that people have said who have actually had a chance to play the game, they've said that the speed has been ramped up due to the criticisms that fans have already had in regards to the previous footage or builds that we've gotten from Spike Chunsoft. All these things, such as playing the guessing game and this being like a poetry in motion thing, can be largely associated with the Sparking series. We've seen that yes, you have to be hot on your toes, you have to actually guess the next move that your opponent is going to make, because it's not going to be one of those things where you're just going to instantly know. So yeah.
I've seen stagnation in the gameplay sphere, where Sparking Zero is extremely similar to the last several dozen Dragon Ball Arena fighters. It feels more like the return of the EA Sports College Football franchise than a new spin on Dragon Ball. Updated graphics with familiar controls. And I need to talk about those controls, because if you've ever wondered what it's like to be one of the Z fighters, turn elsewhere, because the controls are not great. Dragon Ball is at its best when it delivers on fighting and yelling, and Sparking Zero does have a dedicated yell button. Yelling makes your special bar max out, and then you can pull off bigger moves and Kamehamehas, but it comes at the cost of pacing. Powering up freezes you in place while your special bar fills up, leaving you vulnerable to attack. Sure, that's part of DBZ, but it still makes the game feel clunky.
I am at a loss for words right now. So now we're complaining about powering up at the expense of being vulnerable to an attack. which that's a thing in other games such as Dragon Ball FighterZ, which is something that he holds highly compared to other Dragon Ball Z titles. So which one is it? Is it powering up, or the screen button as you call it? Is that one of the things that you would dock points off of when it comes to FighterZ, or is that the thing that's going to be exclusive to so-called arena fighters, like everything that you consider an arena fighter? Because it's not making a lot of sense right now. It's like we're talking about powering up like that's the thing that's going to hurt Sparking Zero, when that's actually one of the things that people enjoy, knowing when and when not to power up.
Here's why. It's because the controls are too complex for casuals, but not technical enough for hardcore gamers. It's been 20 years.
So I think that this guy is a hardcore gamer, since he just said the controls were too meh and they lacked a lot of complexity. It's too complex for casuals. Come on. It's almost like this guy is basically describing Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 2, since that's one of the most notorious games within the series when it comes to complex controls. Even with it being streamlined in Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, we know that once you dive into the core mechanics, it can be a complex game to learn, but it's very fun, and that's one of the things that people appreciate about it. The deep mechanics.
Years since Dragon Ball Budokai 1. And transitioning from ground to air combat is still awkward. Locking on doesn't feel right. Ascending and descending could be streamlined, and it's not always clear if you whiffed a beam because of something you did, or if you just weren't on the right plane. You might even find yourself fighting underwater, but it doesn't slow you down or change anything at all. It just puts on a slightly different filter.
That would also be false. Going underwater changes the game completely. You are going to notice that your character is going to be reduced in speed, and things are going to move a lot slower than they are when you're on the actual planes or in the air. There's also the complaint of changing the access of the character and how they move and whiff out blast. That doesn't make any sense, since the Sparking series, they're known for actually having very accurate movements in that regard. And as you guys are aware, Spike Chunsoft has taken it upon themselves to rebuild this game from the ground up while retaining the core aspects of the previous titles. So I'm not sure where he's getting all these details.
The best fighting games, like Street Fighter, Tekken, and Under Night In-Birth, feel like you're mimicking character motion, gathering power, and pushing a button to release it. There's an emphasis on frame advantage, timing, and spacing that can mean the difference between victory and defeat.
Another reason why I stopped the video in the first place, why I just stopped watching altogether and I'm just now watching the video in full. He keeps mentioning classical 2D fighters and comparing it to a 3D battle arena title. Yes, frame advantage and analyzing all those things, they are important when it comes to the world of 2D fighters. That holds no weight in a 3D battle arena title. Yeah, there might be certain things that you can analyze, such as covering the distance and how long is it going to take for my blast to reach my opponent, things of that nature, but these things hold no bearing on the genre that Sparking Zero takes place in, and the fact that they keep arguing about this and bringing up 2D fighting games pretty much just makes his argument fall flat. But we're going to keep on going because it gets more interesting as we go.
Becomes more of a dance at a higher level. Meanwhile, Sparking Zero feels like you're controlling a tank from very far away, and it's frustrating. Even the best fighting games can sometimes devolve into button mashing, but this is so counterintuitive that it borders on parody, which, hey, might be appropriate. Have you ever watched a Dragon Ball fight? It's all fast punches that don't hit, a knockdown, and a beam to finish it. It's awesome to watch. But when you're watching Goku punch so fast that those frames repeat, or is moving faster than your eyes can clock, that's primarily so animators don't have to draw as much. But it doesn't translate well to gameplay. Playing it is a different beast. It sucks all the energy out of something that, in the anime, was deliberately paced that way to save budget. So
as you hear, now he's resorted to arguing the fact that the animation that was presented in Dragon Ball Z was done because of budgetary limitations, and saying that it does not translate well into the video game space, which I feel like is a bunch of BS, because one of the things that we enjoy is some of the repeated animations. That's what makes it cool, seeing these characters deal out a flurry of punches and seeing them get evaded, or sometimes they make contact. That's the thing that we actually love the game for, how well it emulates the fights that we've seen from the yesteryear, as well as stuff that we have just now seen in things like Dragon Ball Super.
What does Sparking Zero have going for it? Well, for one, there's a huge roster. Unfortunately, there's almost no character differentiation. A lot of the characters share animations and combos. Functionally, there are probably closer to a dozen or so character types, and that's being generous. With 182 slots, who's champing at the bit to play characters like Nail and Kakunsa? If they're gonna go all out, I want some crazy characters. Bulma in a robot, Taco Shirt Krillin, World Tournament announcer, farmer with a shotgun.
Sir, if you want that, then go play Dragon Ball Breakers. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. This is one of the weakest points in your argument, not having a cooler variety of characters. And he's complaining about characters that we do have like it's a bad thing. What's wrong with giving us characters that exist in the world of Dragon Ball Z that can actually fight as opposed to shoot a shotgun, such as this meme farmer shotgun character? What's wrong with that? And who says that they won't have a Taco Shirt Krillin? Like, somebody could easily mod that in. I doubt that's going to give you an advantage on the battlefield. Like, maybe that will lessen the attack points of Android 18 when she attacks him, since she's so enamored by his shirt and that's her husband. But I don't know, let's keep going.
Pay tribute to Toriyama by having one of his self-inserts be playable. There's an aspect of power scaling in Sparking Zero that's supposed to reflect the show's lore. Someone like Super Saiyan Blue Goku hits several times harder than Yamcha, which he well should, but that's a poor substitute for balance. Other games represent power differential matchups by showing different moves and impact. Still, because every Sparking Zero character feels the same with only slight differences, the best we can hope to get is the occasional character-specific power-up animation.
While I will agree with him there, when it comes to the Dragon Ball Tenkaichi / Sparking series, balance isn't necessarily kept in mind, but that's something that we don't really care for. We only care for proper representation of the power scaling that we've seen in the manga and the series. If I play with a character such as Yajirobe, I know that I'm going to get my face caved in. I'm going to be given that to-go plate by somebody like Gogeta, which is what we expect because Gogeta is a strong character. But with that said, does that mean that I don't stand a chance at all? No. When it comes to lower tier characters such as Yajirobe and Hercule, you can supplement some of those inconsistencies with other things to help you win in a battle against a higher tier character. But this guy doesn't take any of that in consideration. He's still arguing the point that this game should be similar to a 2D fighter when in actuality it's a 3D battle arena fighter.
But exploring a bunch of different martial arts styles, whether it's MMA or drunken boxing, brings life into fighting games. Street Fighter VI launched with 18 characters. For the most part, they played differently and oozed with
We also got to talk about how he feels like the roster isn't diverse enough when it comes to gameplay, which is another thing that I feel is very erroneous to say. There have been different characters within this roster that have showcased that they do play differently. The only thing that's similar about them are the core mechanics that come associated with them. Everybody has a power up, everybody can fly, even though they can't necessarily fly. Some characters just kind of float in the air until they gradually slowly descend down. But they are all different in their own ways. You can't just argue the fact that one character is significantly weaker than the other because there isn't proper balance and then say that all the characters play the same. It kind of contradicts your argument there. So yeah, once again, proving that they don't know what they're talking about.
Unique styles, grapplers, rushdown characters, zone types, stance types, and a bunch more. Chun-Li has a different philosophy behind her than Zangief and demands a different playstyle. This doesn't really seem to be the case in Dragon Ball, where all characters are slight variations of Goku. Sparking Zero only has two archetypes, normal and big. It's not an entirely new mechanic, but it was a bit different to play as Oozaru Vegeta, a giant ape form that moved very slowly and had harder punches. But the controls are so floaty and tanky to begin with, it felt more frustrating than anything. So once you've played one character, you've basically played them all.
You basically gave yourself an example of a character that's different from the usual, that being Oozaru. Given the fact that it's a giant ape, it's gonna be a lot more difficult to take out that character as opposed to a normal sized character. And even with that, you know, it still varies because as you guys are aware, if I were to get somebody like a Super Saiyan Goku or maybe a SSJ4 Goku, it would be a cakewalk to take out a character that's significantly weaker than SSJ4 Goku. Is that making any sense? Like, I feel like these things should be self-explanatory, especially for a so-called Dragon Ball Z fan.
Dragon Ball as a whole is so much more. And the games have a hard time bringing that sense of fun and confidence to the forefront. Goku himself was heavily influenced by Journey to the West. With his monkey tail, super strength, and martial arts abilities, as well as his mischievous nature, Goku is a modern-day Sun Wukong. As a matter of fact, Sun Wukong translates to Son Goku in Japanese, and the first Dragon Ball series especially reflects that. It's far more grounded and focused on exploration. There are moments along the way that would be perfect for a new game. For all the talking cats and horny sidekicks Goku might come across, there's a sense of world building that's missing when it's conveyed solely through punching. The anime hinges on big moments and relationships, like escaping the Red Ribbon Army with Bulma, or meeting Yamcha for the first time, or just how many bonds were formed during the first World Martial Arts Tournament. This game strips out all the context for these deep, meaningful friendships that the Z family is built on.
So now their argument is that they want an adventure game pertaining to strictly Dragon Ball, which I don't understand for the life of me why this guy is acting like these games don't exist when in actuality they do. That's nothing new when it comes to this franchise. If you guys have played any kind of Dragon Ball Z games or Dragon Ball games, you may remember the Dragon Ball Advance Adventure title that was on Game Boy Advance, as well as Revenge of King Piccolo that was on the Nintendo Wii. Two Nintendo associated titles that will give you exactly what you're asking for. So why he's bringing this up now makes no sense. It doesn't take anything away from Sparking Zero, because we know what Sparking Zero is. Once again, it's a 3D battle arena fighter. It's not an adventure game. Can it present some of those aspects? Yes, we know that we're getting a story mode that's going to show us some of the events that have transpired in previous arcs of Dragon Ball Z, as well as new arcs that have never been translated to the Sparking/Tenkaichi format, such as Dragon Ball Super. So yeah.
Being one thing, or turning it into a gameplay type, but Dragon Ball is many things. You might think, well, Sparking Zero.
And once again, that's a reminder that Dragon Ball, like he said, is many things. It's very much a multifaceted series that can be made into any video game genre. But this guy has deduced that it's only been made into 3D battle arena games, which couldn't be any further from the truth.
Zero has a dedicated story mode, but at this point we've seen it. Dragon Ball games tread the same ground until it's paved over. The Game Boy games, Legacy of Goku, retold the Z story, but had Goku punching wolves. Kakarot retold the Z story in its entirety. Xenoverse retold the story with some what-if and time travel elements, and included a somewhat lacking create a character. Sparking Zero also has a story mode, but it'll be thin, because we've seen it before.
Yes, we've seen these scenarios time and time again, but one of the things that fans enjoy about replaying these scenarios is the execution, the way in which they're going to be presented to us. Something else to take into consideration is the fact that Spike Chunsoft has already stated that these scenarios will also consist of what-if components, meaning there will be different paths you can take that will alter the story. I also want to remind you guys that Super, like I said, is going to be meeting the Dragon Ball Sparking formula, and we're going to get a chance to see how those stories will be translated. So yes, even though there is a bit of wear and tear in regards to some of these stories that have been told for the 1 millionth time, that doesn't take away from the other aspects that they're going to be presenting to us.
Well thought out stories that challenge the player's perceptions rather than regurgitate it. Heck, where's the story of Dragon Ball pre-Z? How far will we get in the manga? Will we get manga-only characters like Moro? Why not play through some of the less loved but still incredible movies like Super Android 13, or have Janemba's Hell as a stage?
We've gotten that. I'm not sure how long this video took to produce, but I'm pretty sure this video was uploaded shortly after the confirmation of the movie character's inclusion in Sparking Zero. The Janemba stage has been in multiple Dragon Ball Z games, and I'm pretty sure that it'll be in this title, if not later as DLC or maybe just an added in patch. None of these things should matter or take away from the game.
What about a baseball mode? There's so much ancillary content in the Dragon Ball world that is ripe for an adaptation that unfortunately will be left out for the greatest hits. And it could be a better love letter and feel like less of a money grab if they were acknowledged. Instead, we just get Frieza blowing up Krillin for the millionth time. In my opinion, Dragon Ball FighterZ is a much better use of the license and still has a robust, dedicated fan base after 6 years. Ultimately, a sequel to that series would be a better overall direction for the franchise. It's had just one main release and a handful of DLC over the last 6 years, and is a fresh take on the series, which is weird considering it's a 2D fighter.
So once again, he acknowledges the fact that Dragon Ball FighterZ is a 2D fighter. I'm not sure why he says that's weird, that it's gotten so much praise, especially when he's given that said praise, but it's not the best selling Dragon Ball Z game. If I'm not mistaken, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 would actually be the one that holds that title, because that game has sold a lot. That is the highest selling Dragon Ball Z game of all time, and for good reasons. I know some people will go against this argument, but the DLC has been the lifeblood of that game. It's amassed a big and devoted community that's waiting to see what Dimps is going to give them in regards to these DLC packs, which feature characters, certain songs, different menus, as well as maps. That's one of those high-selling games.
It's fast-paced and competitive, so much so that it had a presence at the EVO tournament for 5 of the last 6 years. There are 44 characters.
Once again, Dragon Ball Sparking Zero isn't trying to make it to a EVO tournament. It's not going for a competitive fighter. It's for the fans, made by fans.
And for the most part, they play differently and include some fighting game archetypes that aren't present in arena fighters. It's relatively balanced with only a few insanely OP characters, but they literally just released a patch for that. And the graphics are still gorgeous. It needs more stages, and the menus are clunky, but that's true for most Dragon Ball games. Some moments that evoke nostalgia, like Gohan and Goku's iconic father-son Kamehameha, would be a whole-ass level in a Budokai game. Why can't the Budokai series just give the fans what we all came to see from the jump? FighterZ does.
And I think that's where the problem lies too. He keeps saying Budokai series and lumping Tenkaichi into the same series as the earlier Budokai games, but they're not necessarily the same games. They're not in the same line. They just share similar names. They both have Budokai at the beginning of them. We have Budokai Tenkaichi, but that's obviously a different branch of the Dragon Ball Z video games. That's the 3D Battle Arena segment of the Dragon Ball Z video games. And this guy, for whatever reason, he keeps confusing himself with that.
Does the same thing in special moves that only last a few seconds. There's so much more to mine there that going back to arena fighters for another release feels like a step backward. The games industry has a bad habit of releasing rinse and repeat sequels, and we tend to reward it by buying every new sports game or Call of Duty year after year. At least COD has a different story every time. But Dragon Ball still retreads familiar ground. Wanna see Goku sacrifice via special beam cannon in the Saiyan saga? Here it is, but you can switch to a first-person camera this time. Ultimately, Dragon Ball needs something more artful in execution. Whatever the Dragon Ball equivalent to Slow Clap's 2021 game Sifu, a 2D, 3D phase-shifting game like Pokken Tournament, or maybe something tight and technical with balanced, ranged, and melee combat, like
Now he's bringing up things that aren't even associated with Dragon Ball Z. The only thing that I can give Pokken is the fact that it's being published by Bandai Namco as well, but Pokken is nothing more than Tekken with a Pokemon skin and 3D elements. Once again, showing that this guy will use any strawman argument he has to back up his point that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero feels so similar and not in a good way, when in actuality that's the thing that fans have been asking for. It's one of the reasons why we continue to play Tenkaichi 3 so much, is that everything just felt right about that particular title. The only thing that was lacking from it was the updated roster that we've had since the game's release.
Armored Core 6. According to Bandai sales data, the Dragon Ball franchise has experienced diminishing returns since 2020. It requires...
Once again, false information. I gotta bring up Xenoverse 2 again, highest selling Dragon Ball Z game, and is still selling due to the active community and the fact that Dimps is still producing content for that game.
Requires innovation if it's going to continue at this clip. So why go back to the well for another nostalgia fest? Being the official Tenkaichi 4 could be the kick in the pants the franchise needs, but I think a new, exciting direction is the way to go. This game will no doubt sell millions on name recognition alone, but I think its impact will quickly fade. I don't think we'll talk about it the same way years after release. I hope I'm proven wrong though. A lot of people look back fondly and call Tenkaichi 3 a high watermark, and they deserve to be happy too. One of my friends is really excited about this game and couldn't give a flying nimbus about the game style being played out. I hope DBZ Sparking Zero is more than the same thing in prettier packaging. I hope it outdoes itself and is more fun than I got from the matches I played. Maybe it'll exceed expectations, but mine are very tempered. In the meantime, I'll be hoping for a better use of the license. Just saying.
Whew, so as you hear a bunch of nothing, and then he tries to kind of pull it back and says that he hopes that this game will deliver something different, that just shows you that they were basically just fishing for rage bait, and they failed miserably at doing so. And this is also a reminder too that people who only talk about AAA titles aren't the best when it comes to vouching for or reviewing a Dragon Ball Z game or an anime game in general, because we've seen time and time that these people always base it off of merits that aren't necessarily fair to the title. I can think of so many different examples going all the way back to the G4 days where X-Play would review Dragon Ball Z games not knowing the source material and just going off of certain mechanics that they don't understand, or knowing why a character screams, they would base it off of those principles. So yeah, that's just another example of people not knowing what the hell they're talking about and just going with it. One of the things that I've always had to kind of shoot down is the fact that this game is very similar to other titles such as Dragon Ball Z Kakarot and Dragon Ball Xenoverse, and people only say that because of the 3D aspects that it has to it. But we've already been able to deduce that that couldn't be further from the truth, and I feel like those are stronger arguments than Gameology has. But at the end of the day, Sparking, it's not trying to be anything else but a Sparking game that recaptures the essence and overall feel of Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3. So yeah, I think we should just all wait until we actually get our hands on the game and, you know, base our judgments on our own experiences of that said game. But anyways, that's all I got for you guys. I just wanted to go ahead and do this reaction and give my thoughts on it. I'm pretty sure other people have done that as well, but you know me, I always got to get involved on the fun and just see what's really going on myself, man. But what are your thoughts on this? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Anyways, this is your boy RBG, aka the Random Black Gamer, signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.